I thought you said transvestite.
We're
Oh,
live.
There we go.
That's the first thing anybody hears.
The first
How you guys
word.
doing?
Greetings, everyone. Good evening.
Warfall?
Hold on a sec.
Perps.
Welcome to the charity stream where we're going to be doing something to raise money for gun rights. And
now Warsaw's dropping.
In Illinois.
in Illinois. This is organized by Warsaw Patriot, who is fighting the good fight for the people of Illinois. So let me go ahead and we're going to introduce people since Warsaw is not having a.
Oh, he's here.
You're here, Warsaw? All right, I'm going to kick it over to Warsaw. Go ahead, take it.
Yeah, and I'm going to see
the number you've dialed.
Okay, so as far as I'm aware, the state of Illinois back in January 10th.
Introduce everyone first.
Okay. So, everybody, I'm Warsaw Patriot. You can find me on my main channel on YouTube. We got Dark, Rich White, or Fine Rich, and got John Crump and Coop with the Chinese internet in his hotel. And also, we got Todd Vandermine of. Who's the main guy on Freedom Steel. You can find him on YouTube. And he's the main guy helping us out with our lawsuits federally and statewide issues out of Illinois. So on the date of January 10th, J.B. Pritzker, governor of Illinois, also known as Fat Fuck or call him Burgermeister Meisterburger, he literally signed a bill into law that literally prohibited every citizen, 2.5 million gun owners, to have their firearms now contraband, and they are required by the state that you have to have everything registered to the state. Last time I checked, the registration opens on October, and it ends in January 1st of 2023. And if you don't register it, you're a felon, which is funny because you're just forcing your citizens to self-incriminate yourself. And also, it's not just on firearms; it's also on parts. And Todd, also. It's not just on assault weapons, quote unquote. It's also shotguns and pistols. Can you elaborate on this as well?
Sure. So my reading of the law, there are two sections. 1.9 is the gun ban. 1.10 is the magazine ban. The magazine says any magazine that can be converted to hold more than X number of rounds. It's 5 rounds for a semi-auto shotgun, 10 rounds for most long guns, 15 rounds for a pistol. Well, if you think about the Remington 870, the tube for the receiver is fixed in the receiver. It's part of the gun.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has seen those tube extensions that you screw on the end. Well, they screw it there. It's readily convertible to. That's the language from the statute. And with that, my take on it is since the magazine tube is permanently affixed to the receiver of an 870 and is readily convertible to, you can be charged for having an 870. It should be illegal to sell, and you can be charged for having a magazine that is readily convertible.
Wow. So
and what is the round count?
It's 5 for semi-auto shotguns.
5.
It's 10 for most long guns, and then it's 15 for pistols. So if you Glock magazines, removable base, see the little thing right there?
Yep.
The way they wrote the law, I put a video up on it. I've argued about this, that if you don't JB weld or super glue the base plate to your magazine, it's an illegal magazine because it can be readily converted to. How many have seen those base plate extenders from +1 to +20 for the Chris guns? And all working off of a basic Glock style magazine. And if they can be readily converted to, they're contraband.
Wow.
So any standard. Well, so let me ask this then. So because would the Glock itself also need to be registered and the magazines separately? Are those because you could stick a 33 round stick mag in almost every Glock, right?
They treat mags and they don't say readily convertible for the guns. that the readily convertible to hold more than 15 rounds for a pistol is on the magazine side. But any parts, in most of them, you've seen them talk about accessories in the past, or assault weapon attachments. They went beyond that and they outlawed parts. You can't get a detent, you can't get a spring.
Are you kidding me?
No. And I know Washington gun law they've got something similar in their Washington law. Their law is written a little differently. But yeah, any part that goes into one of these, and what they don't address, what do you do with commonality? So if you have, let's see, Mossberg shotgun, it's completely legal as a pump action shotgun under the bill, but this one's got an adapter on it for M4 style buttstock and an AR style pistol grip. Are they legal for me to sell to put on this shotgun, but not legal to sell if it's going on an AR? They don't address that stuff at all. They've got a mess on their hands that they don't know what to do with. And the state police issued a memo that somebody got a hold of because of a Freedom of Information Act, and they say dust covers, springs, all kinds of stuff, which they're going to try to crank down on stuff.
So if there's a website out there that sells, like random parts, I was going to name a site, but it would probably get us canceled. If there was a website that just sold parts, do they need to now restrict the sale of parts to Illinois based on this lawsuit? Or
Yeah,
this ruling?
and some of the big ones have been.
Wow.
Some of the big ones have been nixing sales to Illinois, whether it be for a trigger or who knows what. A lot of friends have been calling me, and that's why there may be people who are making runs to Brownells and paying with cash, just because. But yeah, no, it's and so that also goes to the registration, as Warsaw talked about. Registration is supposed to open October 1, but it's not just registering the firearm; it's registering every attachment, accessory, part.
How do you do that? I mean, are they
I don't know.
It's an affidavit. It's pretty much an affidavit on the ISP's website they're proposing with the FOID card system.
Wow.
But it's also filed under penalty of perjury, which is a class 3 felony in Illinois.
Oh shoot!
Wow.
Yeah. So if
that is a massive encroachment on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and so
rights.
that's why there's talks of, Fifth Amendment self-incrimination. What do you I have a friend, if you've been around guns for a while, you acquire parts, right? You've always got stuff floating around. You built this, you took this off. What are you going to do for somebody that's got, potentially thousands of springs for detents and whatever, just because, they bought them that way at the time from a spring factory. I mean, I have a friend who's thought about, he says, I probably have 10,000 springs. I'm thinking about registering them individually and see if we can crash the system. But the registration door doesn't close until December 31st. But yeah, and our law is more draconian than Washington. Washington passed theirs after ours, and I think they learned some stuff now. And all of this, all the gun groups, we kind of got together when this was going through the legislature, and I said, I'll testify against it, but normally where I would go apart and tell them how stupid it is and why. They said, we don't do that. We don't let them build a better mousetrap. We don't give them ways to get out of stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's why we ended up with this, horrible piece of garbage that we have, because none of the gun guys that knew anything. The only thing is there was stuff going around early on and said, this is going to outlaw every, semi-auto shotgun. And there was a Democratic senator who hunts and didn't believe it. And somebody said, and the wording in the bill at the time was it would be illegal if any finger other than the trigger finger was below the action of the gun. So how do you hold a traditional shotgun? Where are my other three fingers? They're below the action. And when somebody kind of pointed that out to the senator, his eyes got about this big a wide, and he went running off. And not long after, they took that language out and changed it to something else.
Wow.
But like I said, you've got gun ban, and then you've got the magazine ban, and then contained within the gun ban are the parts and everything else. And it's just a mess. There's a whole subsection for parts. And in this bill was also, they modified red flag stuff in it. They modified FOID card stuff in it. They did a bunch of stuff, and they outlawed the switches and full auto conversions as if they were already illegal under state law. But in that little paragraph, they included tools for such conversions. So are my gunsmithing tools now illegal? Because
screwdrivers, punches,
drill bits,
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, and that part hasn't been tackled yet, but we've contemplated doing that. But when I got together with FFL Illinois and the Aurora Sportsman's Club and a couple others, we put a coalition together. And the original theory that we were going to operate under was, let's do guns and parts in one lawsuit because we think they go together well. Then we would tackle magazines on their own, because when you typically have a 25-page briefing limit with these courts, magazines alone will take up 25 pages. So why short shift the argument? And then we were going to go after the registration and the non-residents. They're only supposed to be here for 24 hours with a prohibited item.
Whoa.
What?
Yeah.
So if somebody comes from out of state with an item that is totally lawful in their state but falls under this ban, they're permitted to be there.
Draconian ban, by the way.
Of course, completely illegal. I did the air quotes. I don't know if you saw that. This rule gives them a maximum of 24 hours to be there with the item that's prohibited.
Correct.
That doesn't even make sense.
That's what they wrote. They were there, and so think about this. So let's say that you're, like people are escaping Illinois to Tennessee. So you decide that you're going to maintain a condo here because the kids are here, the grandkids are here. You're going to come back.
Yeah.
You can, if you're coming back with an AR, you can only be here for 24 hours. I don't know how that's going to hold up. What if you're an RV type person and you keep a gun in your RV and you're coming to...
What if you get a flat tire and are there for 60 seconds longer?
What if you have a heart attack? The good thing is that thank God nobody could plan to do something terrible within a 24-hour period, right?
Right.
This is definitely going to protect all the Illinoisans from. I'm just kidding. Clearly, I'm being facetious. But this is when you came back and said, "F that, we're going to fight." And so one lawsuit was the firearms and firearm parts, and the other was the magazines.
So FFL Illinois filed a lawsuit attacking the gun ban and what I'm calling it is the right to repair. That we have a right to repair our firearms and keep them in good working order. And so with that, all right, my monitor just went dark and I don't know why that happened. There it is. So there's that. NSSF filed a lawsuit attacking guns and magazines. SAF filed a lawsuit attacking guns and magazines. And a local attorney in Southern Illinois, Thomas Mag, filed a lawsuit attacking guns and magazines. Prior to that, there was a town called Naperville put a ban in effect in their town against the one gun store, law weapons. And so he filed a lawsuit with National Association of Gun Rights. And then they amended theirs to include not only the Naperville ban, but the state ban. They got an adverse ruling out of the Judge Kendall, on the 7th out of the Northern District of the 7th. You had another individual by the name of Herrera file a lawsuit attacking the state law, the Cook County ban, and the Chicago ban. And they got an adverse ruling out of theirs. Our judge, Judge Stephen McGlynn, who I call St. Stephen, issued not only a ruling in our favor, he issued an injunction. The state then ran to the federal, to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals issued a stay on Judge McGlynn's injunction. And then because of the Supreme Court's admonishment of the 2nd District and the New York stuff, they expedited oral arguments and a hearing and briefing schedule to where we had oral arguments June 29th. And we're, 5 weeks past that, and we are now awaiting a decision out of the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals.
And Beavis and Herrera, and I think one other, they were all argued on that same day.
They were consolidated. Herrera's attorney got
I know
up there.
Beavis was combined with another case.
Yeah.
We listen to those on the channel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the purposes of appeals, they were all consolidated. And we're waiting the ruling. The panel was Easterbrook, Wood, and I'm drawing a blank on the third judge's name. The third judge was a Trump appointee. He didn't say a lot, but you could tell he wasn't buying their BS. Wood is just a lefty, and Easterbrook had ruled against us prior, but you could tell his consternation from the bench. I saw a law guy wrote an article saying that he thought Easterbrook was in the middle and could be the deciding vote. I think he's going to rule against us. He always thought he should be on the Supreme Court and never got his shot to go there. So I think he harbors a grudge. He hated Heller. When Easterbrook was on the panel that refused to incorporate the Second Amendment under the McDonald ruling and was overturned by the Supreme Court. The judge in Beavis's case, Judge Kendall, she was the one that had the original Ezell cases back in 2011 and 2017 that shot down Chicago's range bans and such.
Yeah, Rhonda Ezell is a good friend of mine and off of the show. She is a wonderful person, and
she is. And people don't understand that case stands for more than the range ban. That case also says that there's a right to acquire a firearm, that the right to keep and bear would be useless without the ability to acquire a firearm. Well, if there's a right to acquire a firearm, there has to be a corresponding right to sell a firearm, whether it's in a commercial setting or in a private setting. And these are some of the things that, in the case I'm involved in, we have been arguing. So if we have the right to acquire, then we should have the right to keep our gun in good working order, because Ezell stood for that training and maintaining proficiency is part of the Second Amendment. So let's jump to the New York case. New York said if it's conduct that falls under the Second Amendment, it's presumptively protected conduct and the burden shifts to the state. So let's walk this through. In the cases that I'm working on and the lawyers I'm working with to argue is that if I have the right to maintain proficiency, I have to have an operable firearm. If I therefore have the right to maintain a firearm in good working order, I have to have the ability to repair my firearm with parts if something breaks. As guns are mechanical things, they break, they fail, things go wrong, stuff happens.
Mostly not Glocks, but yeah, most of them fail.
And so with that, if we establish that there is a right to repair, then the parts bans go bye-bye. And the more conduct we can get the courts to agree that is the right to repair. So if I have the right to repair my firearm, do I then have the right to assemble my own firearm from parts that I acquire. And if I have the right to assemble my own firearm, therefore, don't I have the right to build my own firearm? And if I have the right to build my own firearm, then the whole stuff they want to do about ghost guns and or home built guns or whatever goes out the window. Because if you go back to 1791, most of the guns in this country were made in small companies by blacksmiths, or they were imported from Europe. That's how we fought the Revolutionary War. And so I think that if we tackle this right to repair and push on this gives us a really good foundation to go after all the stuff they're doing for all those empty boxes behind you.
Yeah, some aren't empty. It's an interesting thing though, because it kind of one thing you said rings true to another thing, not to sidestep what we're discussing here, but you had said, like, if these are our natural rights that are supposed to be protected by the Constitution, then if I have a right to buy or build firearms, and I have a right to maintain them, I have a right to use them, to carry them, then this whole new FFL bullshit that's going on too, where they're using fiat law, pretend law, there's no act of Congress, no legislation. They're using executive orders and rule changes to basically say, if you profit off of a sale of a firearm, that bullshit. What you just said rings true, that if I have a right to build them, to buy them, to use them, to carry them, then I absolutely have a right to sell it commercially or independently. So I think that's a really good stance to take from that perspective as well.
Yeah,
but
and Ezell stands at the precipice of that by saying you have the right to maintain proficiency and you have the right to acquire firearms. And it's not a very big step to go where I just walked us through all those things. And I wish more lawyers out there would be harping on this kind of, because New York said if the conduct falls under the Second Amendment, it is presumptively protected and the burden shifts to the state. Okay, then that's how we ought to be, arguing all these things, knowing that we want those 27 words to read like the Encyclopedia Britannica. We want the right to repair, the right to maintain, the right to acquire, the right to sell, the right to build, the right to assemble, the right to practice, the right to carry. All those things then become presumptively protected conduct, and pretty soon the government is left with about that much to regulate. That's the map I think they gave us in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. And it's where, that's why I think the suppressor suits in Southern Illinois are huge, because when Illinois did their carry law, we were the last state in the nation that had a flat out prohibition across the board.
Yeah.
You had a bunch of states that were may issue that were non-existent, but we were the only prohibition. Illinois is the only state between New York and California that has a prohibition on suppressors for civilian ownership. I think it's right. I think if you really want to go after some stuff, if you want to give the other side, and I hear all kinds of guys talking about abolish the NFA and all that stuff. Let's do this smart, because I think it's, for the court at least, a leap too far to sit there and just go after it wholesale. But I think the smartest way to attack part of it would be to sit down and say, okay, the Hughes Amendment. We're not going to attack that machine guns can be regulated under the NFA. What we're going to attack is the cap on civilians in private ownership, which is capped at about 186,000. And you attack the cap, saying, hey, if people are willing to pay the tax, if they're willing to do what the NFA calls for, why? Because now it's the argument, but for the regulation, would these be in common use? Look at what happened with its suppressors when the ASA started attacking state bands across the country, and suppressors went from a few 100,000 to over 5 million.
I will say that the suppressor case, the Illinois, there's two of them that could combine to one case.
Yes.
You have one that's argued by Stephen Stambolia, who happens to be our lawyer, one of our lawyers.
An excellent
That
attorney.
will
Yeah.
be down in Florida on
More than one
Friday.
lawyer going to show up on Friday?
Yes. Yeah, they know it. They
Is it-
know that's not a secret anymore. They know the freaking team's going to show up on Friday. Also,
the A team?
yeah. Also, the ASA, the American Suppressor Association, which I'm
Yeah.
very, very friendly with those guys.
Yep.
They were the other case. They got rolled into one case. So the ASA and Stambolia, they're both challenging the Illinois suppressor ban.
Yep, they are. And good on them. Good on them. And that's why I think there's ways to go after this stuff. Illinois is unique in a few ways that we have some flat out prohibitions, but I think there are ways to go after this stuff that justice isn't thinking about, ATF isn't thinking about, and we're attacking the FOID card here in Illinois. Don't forget that Maryland's semi-auto ban, was argued 7 months ago at the Court of Appeals. They're still waiting on a decision, and they drew a good panel. Then a couple months later, they argued their FOID card case in Maryland. And the great thing about that, if you listen to the orals, this one judge said, so what I'm waiting for the history and tradition that shows that this was, accepted around the time of the founding. And where is that in your briefs? And the representative for the Attorney General of Maryland sat there and said, we couldn't find any.
Yep, that's a Maryland Shall Issue case. Maryland Shall Issue is a freaking great organization.
Yep.
I know those guys too. They're actually headquartered not too far away from Northern Virginia, where a good portion of the panel lives.
Yeah, so they've got that pending out there, and if they get a good ruling on that one, I think it's just going to buttress ours. One of the FOID card cases where a judge found it unconstitutional has been now remanded back to the local circuit court. So they may be going in on a full-blown trial about the FOID card. So we'll see how that's going to tackle. But, if we can throw the FOID card out, if we can beat the semi-auto ban, beat registration, they're not left with a whole lot. I am personally the lead plaintiff in a suit attacking the Cook County gun and ammo tax. And the judge at the circuit court in Cook County ruled against us, and he did it in like 2 pages. And now we're on to the Court of Appeals. And the same law firm that is representing ASA in their suit in Illinois,
Cooper and Kirk.
Yep, they're working on that. On my lawsuit, I worked with those guys through the Shepherd case and the original Cook County ammo tax and several others. So I know those guys; they're good lawyers. I got a lot of good things to say about those guys. But there's a ton of stuff going on here, and there's all we're still waiting for all the stuff out of Benitez, out of California. Who would have thought that with New York coming down last year? I mean, New York is now over a year old, that we would still be waiting on Benitez to issue these rulings.
That really surprised me that we're still waiting on Benitez.
The word I heard from inside the courtroom was that Benitez has said that he is reading everything.
That's what I heard.
If there's a footnote that cites a source, he goes back and reads the original document. It sounds like he's trying to write a series of bulletproof, pun intended, decisions that the appellate court is going to have a real hard time taking apart. But, you just had the appellate court rule in favor of the 2A stuff on the Hawaii butterfly knives. So it'll be interesting now that the typical pattern.
That's another Stambolia case.
Yeah,
we had the lead attorney on the show yesterday.
Yeah, the typical pattern for California is to then ask for an en banc review, because the en banc panel usually flipped everything. They get a good appellate decision, good panel, and then they'd flip it en banc. But Trump almost leveled the playing field on the Ninth Circuit. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that case going up. I mean, California's been getting their teeth kicked in between their handgun roster and everything else. Our thing is just right now, it's the registration thing that's starting to stare guys in the face. And I think if you look at the pistol brace stuff, where out of what congressional research said somewhere between 10 and 40 million. So if you just take 10 million.
Congressional research said up to 10 million. The 40 million came from Alex Bosco, who runs SB Tactical. I don't believe that it is truly 40 million. I believe it's closer to 10, but that's still a hell of a lot, especially if you look at the suppressor case.
Several.
Yeah,
if you look at the suppressor case that said 500,000 is in common use, 10 million is way in common use.
No, it was the Catano case, which was stun guns out of Massachusetts, Massachusetts or Connecticut. And they said 200,000 there.
Connecticut.
So if you sit there and look at 10 million brace guns, and we know they were largely being put on semi-autos, and you had 255,000 register. Now I know a couple of guys who said, I'm going to do SBRs, so I'm just going to save myself the money on a tax stamp.
Yeah, I know a lot of people do that too.
They did it that way. So, I'm going to take this pistol and whatever. I'm now going to, okay. So that 255, how many of them do you think are those guys that tried to just dodge the tax stamp?
I think a lot.
That's still even okay. Let's say 4 to 10 million people, own braces. Let's just say 10 million people own braces, right? Clearly, the sales of those alone would be well beyond establishing common use. But even if the GATF, said, okay, let's just go off of the people that registered them, and it's almost 260,000. Even for those poor saps that actually register, for those individuals that actually registered them, that would still put us in common use territory as well.
Based on Catano, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you look at, and suppressors again, I think but for the regulation, would these be in common use? And I think as you saw how ASA marched across the country and got the suppressor laws repealed, overturned, loosened up, whatever, you saw an explosion over the last decade. I mean, there were probably about 5 major suppressor companies 15 years ago. And now everybody and their brother's making cans.
Yeah. So let me ask this: with all this crazy stuff happening in Illinois, for people just joining us, for all the potential assault weapons ban, the restriction on gun parts and registering of gun parts, I mean literal parts, guys. Okay. Magazine restrictions and standard capacity magazine restrictions and bans and registration. What kind of position do you what's your background? What positioned you to say, you know what, I'm going to be, the lead plaintiff in this. I'm going to jump in and, do you have I think you had mentioned that you have a history. I
was the NRA contract lobbyist in Illinois for over 25 years. I ended up doing some work for the FFL Association after I left the NRA. And with that, I retired. I retired 3 years ago, and I've been watching things at the Capitol spiral out of control and with the supermajority Democrats. And, when I do my shtick on my YouTube channel, the gun law guru, the Illinois gun law guru, that's what they used to call me at the Capitol. When as a non-lawyer, I am arguing in front of the criminal law and judicial committees and bouncing lawyers out of this. And I've been talking with Chuck Michelle out in California.
I know Chuck too.
Yeah, Chuck's our attorney on the FFL case, and I've known him for 20 plus years. Chris Conti hooked us up, and
Chuck's a great guy. He's not from California. He runs Michelle and Associates.
They're in California, and he is now relocated to Las Vegas. But anyways, with all that, without Chris Conte being around, I wanted to make sure that we looked at this through a different lens. And I reached out to Chuck and the gun deal. I know a bunch of the gun dealers here, and I tried to put a collaboration of groups: Gun Saves Life, the Aurora Sportsman's Club, State Line Rifle Association, FFL Illinois. And I said, these are the lawyers I would recommend, because some bunch of the other guys are scooped up by SAF and whatever. And I think SAF does a very, very good job in trying to litigate a bunch of things. But for us, it meant that we would have direct input into how something was being argued. We weren't simply a name on the plaintiff's list, and then, you know, you get sit down, shut up. We're the professionals. We're going to do this. So I stuck my nose into it and convinced the FFL guys that, you know, this is the line. This is the line in the sand. This is where we fight. And I wanted to make sure that they had direct input into how things were being handled and argued. When my buddy was at NRA, Chris Conte, when we did some work on the Cook County gun ban, he had me actually editing amici briefs that were going in. And one of them, I said, you know, the way this ban is, it'll outlaw the 1911. This was several years ago. And I said, and John Moses Browning came through Illinois and actually spent some time here. And I think we ought to mention that in the brief. Yeah, so I've had a hand in this, and I wanted to see things like the right to repair get argued and understand how we can expand on Ezell. And that, reading the New York decision, there's a roadmap there. And that's the map I explained to you guys, the map I see. And unfortunately, in a lot of other cases around the country, I don't see that getting argued as forcefully. And I want, you know, we want to see some of this stuff. I've been one time in the transport law that I wrote in this state, I went to go watch the arguments against it at the court. And an attorney came up to me and said, "Are you Todd?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Why?" She was, "I'm the one that's arguing this case." And she was, "You got time to talk?" I said, "This would have been a really good time to talk about 3 weeks ago when we could have prepped it." And she actually had me sit second chair at the plaintiff's table in front of the Illinois Supreme Court. So
Wow.
I look through this stuff. That's what I thought made me a good lobbyist, is I can work through this stuff, see it, argue it. Words mean things, and I just wanted to see that. And you know, I don't want to leave a state to my grandkids that is going to be this foobarred, and I'm not in the mood. Just, I would, if the politics in Illinois would change, it would be a really nice state to stick around in. But I'm just, you know, I don't want to just cut and run. And I defended 2.5 million gun owners for over 25 years at the Capitol. It was one of the best jobs in the world that I got to stand up for all those guys and throw the flag and call bullshit. And I didn't think I could just cut and run.
Well, good for you for taking a stand and for being willing to fight for the next generation. And that's what it's all about, because the direction that we're headed in, and obviously with everything happening in Illinois and even things that are occurring on a national level, even without legislation, I mean, this is crazy, crazy times. Warsaw, you had something you wanted to add in too, right?
Sure. As far as Illinois is concerned, here's some other things I want to add and bring up the topic of it. Okay. So as far as Illinois is concerned, the first day I remember hearing about this ban back in 2022 of December, I saw Call in the War post a video about it. I'm like, are you fucking shitting me? And there's Burgermeister himself just saying, "Yeah, we're gonna fucking pass this." Yes. And I'm like, you fucking piece of shit. Because,
hey guys,
yeah.
I got my like I said earlier, my kid's sick, but he's like really, really sick now, so I gotta go help take care of him. You guys okay to roll without me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure, John.
All right, cool. Sorry.
Family first, buddy.
Yeah.
It was nice to meet you, John.
It was nice meeting you, Todd.
Yeah, take care of your kiddo, man.
Yeah, it's a little Nicky. He all of a sudden got really, really sick.
You're good, man. We got this. We'll keep rolling on your channel.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, but Yeah, Call Noir. I was watching this video back in December of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And what was going through my head was like, all right, how are we going to handle this? And they were always talking about Highland Park. Well, guys, you don't know about this, about Highland Park. Highland Park, the shooter, Robert Greenwood III, he had a FOID card, but the story is that the media doesn't talk about is how he got it. His father actually expunged his criminal record by paying off possibly the ISP, the Illinois State Police, or the DA, district attorney, and he co-signed his FOID card application, bought the 2 firearms, and you know the rest. Now, even before that, for FOID card holders, we had a 10-year, limit to have it be renewed. Well, back in 2019, they did the exact same thing. Was where in Aurora, the incident of Aurora, they gave another criminal a FOID card, and that was for since 2014. And what flagged him is what actually when he applied for concealed carry. And you know what happened there as well. And ISP wasn't happy as well as the lefties, and he said, well, fix the FOID Act. And now we can't even have a FOID card that has the actual expiration date on it. So you actually have to go on a database in the portal to actually see what's your FOID card's actually expired in 5 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And for the people out there that may live in free states and don't understand what a FOID card is, give kind of a brief explanation of what that is.
A FOID card is in other words, it's a owner's identification card for the Illinois State Police that you got to apply for in order to own or possess or buy a firearm, pretty much. And Todd, last time I checked, didn't we also have a case with our previous governor with the knife? There was some certain knife law that we had.
Yeah, there was a change. Autos were illegal in Illinois, and the knife rights guys with Todd Raffner came in, and because we have the FOID card, if you have a FOID card, you can now have an auto knife.
Like a auto knife.
Yep.
So okay, so you can't own an auto knife. Shout out to Tac Knives. You can't own an auto knife without a FOID card, or you can't carry it, or either one.
Can't own it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That also falls through. The FOID card Act has been getting added to tasers, fall under the FOID card Act.
For ownership? For ownership?
For ownership. Yep.
Man,
that happened under Rod Blagojevich, the governor that went to jail or was impeached and removed.
Yep.
What about ammonium nitrate? Just asking.
He just started putting tannerite under the FOID card this last session.
Oh,
wow.
You want to see if you think that's crazy. I actually encountered this. You can't even get a surplus Russian artillery crate, something that's surplus, it's just a box. You can't even purchase that out of state lines without a FOID card being emailed or printed to the actual purchaser of the place you're buying it from.
a box.
Some out of state retailers are taking it to an extreme because they don't understand our law and they don't want to get caught up in it. And I don't put it past this attorney general to be running stings and doing other things. The governor's on the verge. If he didn't do it today, they just wrote a law to kind of do what they did to Remington out in Massachusetts. And it attacks the marketing, and it goes well beyond that, because if you sell anything that makes a firearm more lethal, you can be sued.
What is more lethal? That's pretty subjective.
They don't explain that, but I would argue that hollow point bullets make guns more lethal.
Wow.
And the point is that, and this is where I think our side doesn't, everybody wants to thump their chest about the 2A and get into all this stuff. To me, there's some downstate Democrats, and downstate Democrats are traditionally pro-gun, and they voted for this stuff. And we've got Olin in Alton, Illinois. So you're looking at potentially suing Olin Corporation and running 2,500 union jobs out of the state of Illinois. And that's a mail piece I would love to drop into Democratic households that they want to run 2,500 union jobs out of the state of Illinois and beat that war drum down there and watch everybody's eyes get about this big around. But it goes beyond that because it also goes after quote unquote illegal paramilitary training.
What?
Illegal.
Yep.
Yeah. That they don't all right, so if my face goes blank here, I'm going to go over to it so I can quote the exact bill for you. I just have to get into the other website.
Illegal So there's legal training and illegal training.
No, well, let's see.
I would guess it's probably like if someone has a private militia and offers training or something like that, they're probably targeting
Let's
people
see,
like
firearm
that.
accessory.
And while
So
you pull that up,
So
someone
here's
asked,
the first part. Firearms related product means a firearm, firearm ammunition, a firearm precursor part, firearm component, or a firearm accessory that meets any of the following: is sold or distributed in Illinois, is intended to be sold or distributed in Illinois, was possessed in Illinois. And they start there. And let's see, where's advertise? Oh, hang on, I got to do my quick search. You guys keep talking for a second while I find this.
so Man Against the Masses also asked, he said, ask Todd when he will be on air with Greg Bishop.
Greg Bishop.
Do you know
Greg
who that
Bishop is a talk show host in Springfield, Illinois. I've known Greg a number of years, and he's on the right side of reporting all this stuff and does that. So, unlawful paramilitary or private militia means a group of armed individuals organized privately in violation of the Military Code of Illinois in Section 2 of Article 12 of the Illinois Constitution. So, and that's, so here, if you advertise, market, or promote a firearm related product in a manner that reasonably appears to support, recommend, or encourage individuals to engage in unlawful paramilitary or private militia activity in Illinois, or
What?
individuals who are not in the National Guard, United States Armed Forces Reserves, United States Armed Forces, or any duly authorized military organization to use a firearm-related product.
So the only lawful training is government training. Is what you say?
Possibly.
That is completely. I mean that is just such an overreach. That is crazy. That's the purpose of the private militia.
Yeah,
in the Constitution, in the front, not just the Second Amendment. It's in the Constitution.
Yeah,
they don't care.
So
they got balls.
Yeah, so I mean, and understand. So they got all revved up about that JR-15 that was being made by a company here in Illinois. They were getting their panties in a knot about all that stuff, and so they want all this. But I grew up as a Boy Scout. Boys Life magazine. There were ads in there because we have a rifle and shotgun merit badge. So you can't do that. The cricket is illegal to market. I mean, forget the fact that you can't, until you're 18 with a FOID card, you can't buy a gun. I mean, I don't know a dealer in the world that's going to sell an 8-year-old a firearm.
Right.
Could they handle or possess them with their parent? I mean,
Yes.
Of course, with totalitarian Illinois rules, a child could shoot a cricket, but they're not allowed to market them to children, and they would have to be with a parent that would be a FOID card holder.
Yeah, because apparently an 8-year-old has such sway over their parents that they will force them to go to a gun store and buy this exact gun or whatever. I don't know. I never had that sway over my parents. So, but these are all the things that are coming up in Illinois. We hear that the NSSF may be prepping a lawsuit against this bill because of the way it impacts everybody. So we'll see. these are just some of the things that have been coming down the pipe here in Illinois. And I mean, it's like, it's almost faster than you can draft a lawsuit for them, but it's going to get real spicy out here.
Yeah.
You know,
For the people out there that are in free states thinking, man, that sucks that it's happening to them. These are all things that are coming to a state near you, that this is something that if they're not stopped, they will be knocking at your front door, literally. So you've been fighting this for a long time. I know not you alone, right? But, you've been involved in the fight here for a long time, and, you guys need funding. And that's why we're doing this stream, so we can ask for you guys to help support the fight before this gets to your doorstep as well. So Rich has been putting the website in the chat here, so you guys can, whether it's $1 or anything that you'd be able to contribute would be a huge help. And also just sharing it, letting people know what's going on, it would be a huge help too.
Yeah,
and we appreciate it because, like I said, I think when you see the things that we argue about and the things that we talk about, we are, where else are you hearing anybody argue about the right to repair?
Yeah,
and I think that Washington, Washington learned from us, because I did a piece on my YouTube channel that they banned the 1022. 50% of the 1022 models marketed out there have a feature that prohibits them. But they threw this all-encompassing catch-all in there that said they define a barrel shroud as something that allows you to hold the firearm, the rifle, with the non-firing hand without getting burned. How do you hold a traditional rifle? So that's your typical forestock, all right? And if you'll notice, if you ever messed around with 1022s, the factory just wooden stock 1022 has a barrel band around it that that ties the barrel to the stock.
Yeah.
And when they wrote the Washington law, they specifically excluded stock forends like that. So they learned something from when we started. It's like, let them put this out there. They passed ours, and then we started talking about it once it was signed, about all these things that are banned. And one of the other things they did in Illinois, they didn't limit this to center fire. They went after rim fire as well. So your NMP 22s, your GSG 5s, your AK 22s, 1022s, they're all just, they can be, a threaded barrel 1022 is just as prohibited as an AR-15.
That's insane. That is insane.
That's how broad this ban is that I've been arguing about, because, and people say, well, they're still selling 1022 at Shields. Look, their corporate lawyers may have made a decision. I can only tell you that I read bills and I read laws as if I had the worst prosecutor in the world trying to jam me up. Could they do it? And I would argue that in parts of the state, they absolutely could bring those charges. And then you're left to, you might beat the rat, but you ain't going to beat the ride.
Yeah.
And those are the things that are, going on. Those are some of the things that are buried in here, that we ferreted out and went through line by line by line. And if you look, most modern semi-auto shotguns have a magazine tube that can be converted to hold more than 5 rounds. And the other unique thing is they didn't specify what kind of round. So while the gun may not function with mini shells, it'll certainly hold more than 5 mini shells.
Wow. That's crazy. Warsaw, you were saying something as well?
As far as this ban that we've been dealing with, there's some good things out of this now. The only ones that are actually going to be stupid enough to try to enforce this is the Illinois State Police. But even they are even hesitant right now, because they're like, let's not do this. Let's not do this. But the whole Sheriff Association, they only have 3 counties in Illinois that actually are planning on enforcing it. That's Chicago, parts of DuPage, and then you got Cook County. The other parts of Illinois said, we are not enforcing this. And that's majority of the Sheriff Association.
Well, all right. Let me correct you on one thing. The DuPage Sheriff is not going to enforce this per se. It's the Lake County Sheriff, the Cook County Sheriff, and the Champaign County Sheriff in Central Illinois. Those are the three sheriffs that have openly said they will enforce this. 99 sheriffs signed letters and sent stuff out saying there's 102 counties in Illinois, and they said we want no part of this. And at our gun club, the Aurora Sportsman's Club, we rent a lot of ranges to cops, and I talk to cops every week when I see them on the range to make sure everything's going good at the club for them. And we get state guys that come out, and they want no part of this. The average line cop that I'm talking to out there wants no part of this. And just to give you another part of this that's crazy is, so now if you go to the range, and so it's legal for you to have your 30 round PMAG, but when you go, you can only take it to the range or other private property that's not open to the public. And if you do so, it has to be unloaded and enclosed in a case when you're transporting it.
Yep, that's what we've been dealing with.
What benefit that doesn't even make sense?
Well, they just think that if it's not loaded and it's illegal to have the magazine loaded in the car or vehicle, then you can't, do a drive-by or who knows what. But
So,
that's how ridiculous they get, except that the penalty is a petty offense. It's a traffic ticket.
Virginia has, due to very old poaching laws, Virginia has some laws, regarding long guns, for an example, that you can't have a loaded long gun in your vehicle, because back then people would drive around and they would poach, right?
Right.
But even if you have a permit, the permits here are CHPs, so they're specifically concealed handgun permits.
So
they don't. Okay. So they don't cover, knives, long guns, or anything. So you could have a rifle in your trunk with 20 magazines next to it loaded up, but you can't actually have a magazine inserted in it or loaded in any condition, which is kind of crazy.
Right.
This is, it's kind of nuts. Guys, excuse me for 1 second. Keep going. I'll be right back about 30 seconds.
No problem, guys. But yeah, that's all that they've really gone over the edge on this with what's included and what you can do.
Like what Dark was saying, like this stuff could actually happen to other states. And guys, I don't care who you are or what you say. Moving state out of state has really positives and negatives. Sure, you can move out of state, stay like Texas or wherever, and have your fun. But mind you, this is also affecting other people on a power vacuum system, because I hate to tell you this, but politics spread state to state. I mean, look at Tennessee and Kentucky. Oh, yeah. And now you got Oregon and Washington State is just flipped. I mean, hell, you could see, Minnesota just was proposing gun legislation on the 8% lowers, and a whole bunch of people got in trouble on the crossfires because of that. But yeah, like, here's the thing about Illinois' law. They passed it exactly like the New York SAFE Act in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, when nobody ever saw it or read it. And that's
like
what
the
happens.
New York SAFE Act, yeah.
Yep. And like I said, they could do it in any state if they wanted to. And that's like a mafia style sit down in my book.
Yeah, no, it's this stuff has got a ton of stuff buried into it. And that's why it was like, let them write what god awful piece of junk they think they can pass, because the worse it is, I think the better off it is to knock off in the courts. And that's where we are. Everybody, since the cases got consolidated, everybody is trying to work together for the most part. It just sometimes gets a little annoying that you get a bunch of groups that want to jump in because they want to be the first to beat their chest and look what we did or whatever.
Right.
There's, but fortunately there's, between the lawyers, there's a fair amount of cooperation and communication going on with this. So all good. Glad that that's going on. I'm glad to be a part of it. But yeah, it's expensive to do this. It's real expensive to do this. And, we've probably spent $250,000 to date on this first lawsuit. And we'll have a couple, depending on what's going on, there's likely to be a couple more. So, we'll see what's going to happen.
Yeah, and also, guys, I don't know if you're aware, but last week, even though it's not America's related, but our neighbor Canada, they just passed a bill into law where they can't even have any social media for news outlets up there in their country. So, apart from gun laws, if they can do that in a country,
so are you saying in Canada you couldn't have a YouTube news channel?
Pretty much. Dark, you're blocked on sound.
Sorry about that. I'm sitting here like talking.
Yeah.
My bad.
But, yeah.
So I was just adding on to that it's not the only place, but of course Canada is actively doing this now. What type of other places do we know of that are intentionally targeting alt media sources? Because when people are getting their like we have the mainstream media, right? It's essentially the same damn thing as state-sponsored TV, right? Because
Correct.
we know that the mainstream media, Alphabet, Google, YouTube, they're all walking hand in hand down the street with the federal government together. Like all their messaging is so, precision
Project
crafted.
Mockingbird.
100%. This is like CNC machined messages to be digested. They're all literally spitting the same sentences. They're all, it's terrifying. And once they can come after
I'm
you,
shocked. Like, if I got a script and I hate reading, like, I want to find more information on a news story, and I'll go to 7 different online outlets, and word for word, I don't know if it's AP or whatever, it's the same. Like, just throw it in a word randomizer.
Yeah.
Yep. And
get a few different words in there, or cut the paragraphs different. Something.
Well, look at this. If they can do that, then here goes your 3D printed firearms that you're trying to make.
Yeah. There's no limitation
Try?
to
Try?
what they can do.
Wait, what is it Yoda says? Try?
Well, to signal.
Well, if they truly wanted to, and they want to, well, let me say it differently, because I know they want to. If their intention was to, just wipe out 3D printing of firearms and the private manufacturing of firearms nationwide, I think they have the right idea now, right? Which is why I think it's important that we help with Illinois, because
from my cold dead hands
with your filament. Look, the reality is, I think they realize that they can't just throw these, federal restrictions, rules, laws, regulations, and whatever out, right? I think they realize they can't make the headway that they want to or need to like that. So what they're doing is they are sneaking into states, and one at a time, they are, taking little chunks out of freedom and independence, one state at a time, one step at a time.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I'll even go one step further. I think so. The Supreme Court has accepted the Romani case, which deals with civil orders of protection on the DV stuff, right? And the court's going to rule on that next June. So I'm betting that they are hoping to get a bump stocks, something like that, up there as well. And then potentially, I think they are just dying. The other side is to get a semi-auto ban before the court. And they would expect those 3 to go our way. And then they are going to campaign against the court the same way they did when the Dobbs decision came out. They want to run, against this illegitimate court. And they're going to just keep harping on this court and everything else. They're not paying attention to the will of the people. Well, the Constitution was not there for mob rule. And with that, I don't think the Republicans are adequately thinking how, look at the horrible response they had to the Dobbs decision and how to handle it and how to message that. And now I think that if we have Year of the Gun in 2024 in June coming from the court, I think that they are ill prepared And then if the Democrats hold the White House and the Senate, and God forbid they take the House back, then they can pack the court. And this will be all part of their excuse to go up there and pack the court.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hell yeah.
Also, Todd, Governor Pritzker, he passed that bill 218, correct?
It was sent to the word I got from some people down at the Capitol, they thought he would sign it today. I haven't seen anything that noticed that he signed it, but the AP story that came out late last week clearly said he was going to sign it this week. I'm surprised he didn't sign it on the 4th of July in Highland Park.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's going. That thing is going to be coming at us very, very quickly. So
yeah. But the reason why I bring it up is because I found out like 3 weeks ago out of California, 9th District, they struck down theirs. I could be wrong. It's about the same thing that they're trying to pass here in Illinois.
Yeah. Kwame is banking on the tobacco settlements that Illinois got and the prohibitions on marketing on tobacco, except tobacco products aren't written into the Constitution. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that comes together.
See, all we ask for is freedom and independence and to be left alone. That's it, right? Like, why does everything have to become, whether it's tobacco, somebody wants to hear, you know what? I actually, this may be a little bit of a sidestep. I know we're focused on Illinois and what's going on there. And guys, if you can, please do contribute to the link that Rich has been dropping. This is really important to not only all of our viewers and everyone that we know and care about that lives in Illinois, but also these types of things that are happening in other states. We sit back and watch and say, man, I can't believe that's happening in a state like this. Like, there was a time where Virginia, where I live, was like the 13th most firearm friendly state in the United States.
Yeah.
Well, after 5 years ago, it's now like number 37 out of 50. We still have a lot of freedoms, but I never would have guessed that it would have made a shift like that. Like, that's insane. These things will come to your state if we don't help stop these things.
Right.
That's why we're doing this.
And one of the problems that we have is that the Democrats, typically when they gain control, they mash down on the throttle and go full tilt. Republicans, we just got power. We don't want to make everybody mad. We want to stay here for a while, and then we can. And what do? They normally, pay their respects to the business community and to, the medical profession and some other guys like that. And then all the, grassroots conservatives get left in the dust and, thank you for your vote. Now we're going to go do other stuff. And they never wield. I mean, Obamacare came about. The Democrats just said, screw you. We're going to break arms till we get the votes. We're going to pass it. Take us to court. And one of the things that I'm arguing for with a bunch of guys is that the next time we go up to the Supreme Court on a gun case, that there should be a amici brief that solely deals with states like Illinois sit there and pass gun control in 72 hours. And here we are 7 months later trying to get our rights restored. Why? That's not due process.
Right.
That's not speedy justice.
It pisses me off. What the heck does consent of the governed mean? What does that mean?
Yeah. It's with our it's supposed to be with our consent, with the consent of the governed.
Yeah. And but I think, and I've had lawyers say, well, I said, no, that message needs to be laid front and square in front of Alito and Thomas and Roberts and sit there and say, look, there are 4 boxes to this shit show that we're in. We're on box number 3. You guys have the ability to correct these wrongs. And by taking, and I wasn't happy with yesterday's decision on the frame and receivers rule. I think I know what Roberts is doing. Roberts has typically been a guy who wants the process to play out. He doesn't want to jump in the middle. But this is a classic example of there's a great overreach on behalf of an agency. And if you don't stomp on it like a cockroach, they're just going to keep doing the same thing. Now we got this other proposed rule that they're talking about that they've let out of the bag about anybody that profits that you brought up earlier, that any profit now makes you a FFL. This stuff needs to be stomped on, hard. And what I think, we've sat here for the last 3 years and watched them try to strip cops of qualified immunity. Well, I think that there comes a point in time where we ought to try going after legislative immunity. The difference between these legislators who push their little green buttons at a desk, they're no different than who was the notorious cop down in the South during the civil rights movement? He used
I know what you're talking about.
He used fire hoses and dogs.
Yeah.
These legislators are no different. They're just trampling on the civil rights. Huh? Oh yeah.
Gun doctor jumped in.
Yeah, they're doing the same thing. They're just doing it with a pen. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's interesting. Most of their irrational, unreasonable, rules, restrictions, thoughts, ideas, the shit that they're trying to put forward, it is so unnatural, right? And then it takes someone like, okay, for an example, and they're witty with this FFL thing, right? Like, if you've made profit on the sale of any firearm, you must only be doing it for commercial purpose. So therefore you would need to get your FFL or be accused and likely charged and even convicted of, illegally operating as a firearm, whatever, manufacturer, transferee, whatever, an unlicensed, firearms distributor, seller, whatever. But, to hear you say, well, hold on, it's really simple, right? One of the quotes that I love is, oh God, what is it? I'll come back to it. After I say it, it'll come to me. You were like, well, look, if I have a natural right that is given to me, by my creator, whoever y'all's gods are, right? Like, if that right is natural to you, given to you, and is supposed to be guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States, guaranteed to you by the Constitution of your state, right? If you have that right to build a gun, buy a gun, carry a gun, use a gun for self-preservation, whatever, then you absolutely have that same right to sell a gun, right? Because then that you not being able to sell a gun would prevent somebody else from being able to exercise their natural rights, even if it wasn't guaranteed to you, right?
Right. One of the cases I was involved in was Illinois Firearm Retailers Association against the city of Chicago, and the federal court here found that you can't just prohibit all gun shops.
I remember the highest form of sophistication is simplicity. That was the quote that I love, and I love how what you came up with was just, it's simple, like duh. Sorry, forgive me.
That's fine. These are the things that we've treaded some of this ground before. And it's like everybody seems to forget, but certain issues got to get before the court. And granted, Romani is not the poster child you would want to go up on, but it's the case we got in front of us. So you know what? And I think that if played correctly, you harp on what the Fifth Circuit did, and they said it's all the civil side. There's a way to keep this guy from having a gun. That's put him in jail for the domestic violence that he committed. Mm-hmm. Okay, so our side should be attacking, like Illinois has this very vague, clear and present danger thing. And, a school principal can file a letter with the state police and strip you of your rights. And you then have to go to court to fight and get it back. And, oh, by the way, they're given immunity from anything they turn into the state police.
Wow.
That's crazy. Part of the red flag law here in Illinois as well, that the qualified examiners or whatever, they're all given immunity from whatever they file.
So what crimes are you allowed, let me say, what other crimes are you allowed to make false statements and false charges against people and get away with it?
I don't know. But that's where,
so I could have my property taken away from me, some property that's pretty expensive,
Right.
on just a false claim.
Yep. And you have to go to court and prove your innocence, which is upside down from all this stuff. And that's where, that. So the Romani case for us, we should look at attacking the civil stuff. You attack the red flag stuff or the lack of due process and the civil nature that it is. The Illinois clear and present danger. Look, I understand that, and Illinois' mental health standard is so out there, it isn't funny. If you land in a bed, one way or another, and we've had guys involved in car accidents, and the only available bed is in the psych ward, and it gets coded and it gets reported.
Oh, shoot.
And it gets reported to the Illinois Department of Human Services, which then gets bounced. Their database of admissions gets bounced against the FOID card list every night. And
No way.
You have now landed, you're tagged. You now have to go prove, even though you weren't there for a psych thing. I have a friend recently got into a peeing match with his wife. They were both drinking. He left the house. She called the cops, and they did an involuntary 72-hour hold on the guy. The guy comes out. The doctors say, you were drunk, you were mad. There's nothing wrong. You're not psychotic. He now has a 5-year.
Now, is that called a Baker Act, or what is that called?
It's an involuntary. There's an involuntary.
In Florida, it's called a Baker Act.
Yeah, it's similar, but the other part here in Illinois is, let's say that you got a vet. He's got post-traumatic stress, and he checks himself in just to make sure. Day later, doc says, look, cut down on the booze, go on vacation, get laid, you'll be fine, right? And all of a sudden, but there's no finding. Just the fact that he did an inpatient process, he now has a 5-year bar. And that's where I think Illinois' mental health standard, and that's how they deny non-resident carry permits, because all the 46 other states don't have the same mental health standard that Illinois does. And I think the way you attack the mental health standard in Illinois, you attack the non-resident carry application, because our driver's licenses are good across state lines.
Right.
So then they're like, well, but wait a minute, let's look at the mental health standard that you're saying. And does this subjectively hold up? And under the New York standard, I don't think it does.
By New York standard, are you referring to Bruin?
Yeah. See, I don't like arguing Bruin based on the losing guy. It was New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. And that's why I refer to it as New York. And don't forget, prior to that case, there was another case about transporting guns in New York City. That was also an NRA funded case. As much as they are a shit show today, my friend, God rest his soul, did a lot of good work up there and had a lot of cases staged up. The Maryland semi-auto ban was a case he set up and put in the posture that it was in. And so with all that, I just don't think that Bruin, the guy that got his ass beat, should be the guy that's getting all the credit for everything. I think New York State Rifle and Pistol Association should be. That's why I call it New York. But remember, New York played a fast game because they went and modified their transport law, because we would have had New York a year earlier had they not changed their law, because in New York City, there were 5 gun ranges, and the only place you could take your gun was to and from the range.
Yeah.
You couldn't take it to your house in upstate. You couldn't take it to a match down in Virginia. You could only go that way. And just like in the Illinois law. So in Illinois, if you have a threaded barrel on your pistol, it's illegal to carry anymore.
What?
So what they said is, if it's an assault weapon, you can use it on your property. You can go to private property that is not open to the general public. All right. You can't be on government property. Well, what's the sidewalk?
Yeah.
There's a question about whether or not it's legal to have in your vehicle as you're driving down the road. But so now they've impinged on the carry stuff.
That's
and
crazy.
People don't get it. And it's like, so they're impacting, the carry laws. And that's, that's a whole nother wing to this thing that they, and the question is, are they actually this devious? Or are they just lucky because they're this stupid when they write stuff? Because the old quote is never attribute to conspiracy what can be attributed to stupidity. And but we know that the Everytown lawyers, we know that Giffords are up to their elbows and stuff, coaching everybody and writing what they want behind the scenes until they get pushback, like their thing on the semi-auto shotguns and the way your hand wrapped around a traditional stock until they get
ridiculous.
such pushback because they don't know what they're talking about with guns.
Yeah, they have no technical knowledge.
Yeah, and so one of the things, I keep seeing, the donation link to SADEC. So it's Second Amendment Defense and Education Committee. I'm on the board there. It was spooled up because, again, so some of the guys that have been around this stuff for a while wanted to see that they had control over how the money was spent and that the arguments and the stuff that was being put forward was being done so in a quality fashion. Right after Heller, we saw a bunch of stuff. Lawyers were filing stuff left and right, and it looked like spaghetti against the wall. So, guys, there's a number of people that join together that want to make sure that we tackle good issues in a smart way, and we build a foundation to just keep tearing this stuff down brick by brick, and that's what we're doing. And but it does cost a lot of money to do this stuff. It really does.
Yeah, and you're retired, right? You said you retired 3 years ago, and you're contributing a lot of your time to fighting.
Oh yeah, I read all the court decisions that come out. I read briefs, and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things I went and did after New York came out is I went back and looked at all the anti-gun amici briefs because that told you what they were going to say.
Yeah.
And I've seen Saul Cornell's work, and he showed up here in Illinois as one of their paid experts. And the state's been spending money with him and a couple other guys in doing all that. And I share that when I see that stuff come up with Chuck Michelle and other lawyers and say, hey, you're going to see this sooner or later. And when that one retired Marine Corps officer wrote that stupid expert opinion out in California, I helped those guys tear it apart. And for how an AR-15 or a 5.56 round will just cut a body in half.
Well, I mean, 9mm pulls a lung out of the body, so all you need is lung right out of the body.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So,
I've seen videos of guys taking 5 rounds of 5.56 center mass and run, hide, and take 30 minutes to bleed out while they're firing back at but again, they don't have any technical knowledge, right? So for everyone out there, if you guys could help, you would be contributing to not only helping in Illinois but potentially preventing this from coming to your state as well, because if they were to be successful in another state like Illinois, then what do you think they're going to do beyond that? Right. These are some of the these are some of the most well-funded anti-gun organizations in the world, or in the country rather. And they're absolutely going to be going state to state to state. So let me ask you guys this, because you two are obviously impacted by this mostly. All of us are, right? One of our rights is all of our rights, and I truly believe that. But let me ask you this: with these specific cases, what's the thing that terrifies you most about it, and what are you most hopeful about? I think those are two questions that would kind of, I guess I'm interested in.
Most hopeful about is it's so bad that the court's going to look at it and ultimately throw it out. And depending on how the argument is framed, that we expand that scope of the Second Amendment that's protected conduct, as I talked about earlier. Terrifying is it's probably going to curb my travel habits in how and when I go to certain places in this state to make sure that, there's a running gag when I cleaned out my truck one time. I dug up over 44 magazines. And there's always a running joke every time I clean out my truck, how much ammo and how many magazines am I going to find?
Yeah.
So it's how are they going to enforce this thing? And I don't want to say what's on my mind because I don't want to give them any more ideas.
Yeah.
But when penalty of perjury is an automatic felony, and you signed your name on a slip saying, "Oh no, I don't have any of this stuff," but
Yeah.
I think you're going to see massive non-compliance with the registration component because people, people just don't know what's all included in this. How is it that I can't buy a roll pin for an AR from a gun shop, but I can go to Home Depot and buy the exact same roll pin?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. That's ridiculous.
or spring or D10 or whatever.
right. It's
Yeah.
all those things. And I had an FFL. The blind share of my business was destroying evidence guns that the cops had gotten the judicial orders to destroy, and we would chop the frames, and then we would scavenge all the other parts, and we'd sell the other parts. Where does it start and where does it stop? I mean, like
Yeah.
I said, GSG 5s, those 22 knockoffs of the MP5 are illegal under this. And all that kind of stuff. So, and if you've been a gun guy for a while, you've got parts, you've got mags, you've got all
Oh yeah.
kinds of stuff. And it was like, oh, and what do you do? Like I said, about the same parts that are interchangeable between an AR and a Mossberg or a Remington shotgun. And what are they going to do about the Remington shotgun? I did a whole declaration. I'll get it to Warsaw and he can email it to you. I did a whole declaration on all the stuff that I was citing as being illegal and why and all that kind of stuff. Threaded barrels, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is, and my wife is, because I was the NRA guy for so long. And because I have a tendency to poke the bear a little bit, she's nervous that somebody's going to not come up and show up here, and it's when I'm not going to be around. So
What do you mean? They just put a gag on order on you first, right?
You could at least throw like roll pins at them or something.
Yeah,
Well, you got a Home Depot.
I live in Kendall County, so I'm outside of the Chicago ring and all that stuff. My sheriff's a good guy. My state's attorney here is a good guy, but it all depends. The state police cannot police and enforce the Gun Dealer Licensing Act as it is right now. And dealers are getting contradictory information from the state police. And we'll see what it looks like. The question is, we're the first state to go down this road in a very long time. And that's why the registration stuff, guys in California, Massachusetts, they've been living with this stuff for 20 years. To them, it's like, oh, this is the way it is. Well, this is all brand new to people out here. It's going to be real interesting because I know there are a number of individuals who say, you know what, once you're a felon, you're a felon.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, if this was happening on a federal level or in my state, and this is why I believe in this, and when Warsaw, brought it to my attention, I was like, I'm totally down to do the stream and help, do what I can to help you guys get some more funding because, this is something that spreads like cancer. Something that was said actually when you guys did your stream, Rich, when you and Crump did your stream on the Ninth Circuit Court decision on the butterfly knives. One of the things that Alan, the attorney that worked with Stromboli, that worked with Stromboli, said one thing that people just do not understand is that government will continue to get bigger and bigger. The only way to stop them from getting bigger is lawsuits. and it just clicked. Like, it made perfect sense. It was like, man,
Mhm.
that's so right. Like, it seems like that's been our only effective way to stop them in their tracks, right? Like, look what they were trying to do with braces. Look what they were trying to do with frames and receivers. Now, I know a lot of people are kind of shitting on the Supreme Court justices that didn't vote in the favor of freedom. I originally was really disturbed by that, but it appears that what they were doing was more administrative than anything that was against us. So give it some time. Let's see how it ends, and I think we'll be looking at a more favorable direction in the end. But either way, there's no reason to ever vote against freedom. But I guess my point to all this is that look what they were doing with braces. We fought them. Look what they were doing with unfinished frames and receivers. We fought them. All these assault weapons bills and restrictions for carrying. The only things that have allowed us to get these wins is to lawfully fight them in court. And
But the problem with we have to do it because that's the system that we operate within. But the sad part of it is they're playing with our money.
yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, they're the
They're using our
house,
money against
and
us.
they're playing with our money, and we have we pay our taxes, and they get to use our money against us, and then we have to turn around and fundraise and do things to be able to afford, because none of these lawyers are just doing this out of the goodness of their heart for free. You know, Paul Clement charges somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,500 an hour.
Mm.
You know, I mean, that stuff don't come cheap.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that's why I think it's, you know, we color within the lines, we do all that, but that's why I think that brief to the court is important to say, hey, we've been out here playing by the rules, and, you know, it's taking us years at times to sit there, and, you know, you waited 14 years to try to put your foot down and say you all been getting heller wrong all this time. Now, there's a thought I heard from some people that, you know, Alito would never let a case go forward that they couldn't get the 5 votes on, and he wasn't going to jeopardize anything and let Ginsburg or somebody else try to undo what they got in Heller and McDonald. And so there's that faction to it. But, you know, you would think that with a 6-person panel like we've got, we should be doing well, and we ought to mash down on the throttle, go full bore, grab everything we can. But there needs to be, you know, they need to, you know, just be confronted with a brief that says, hey, we're coloring inside the lines. We're the good guys. We're trying to do stuff. And, you know, why do we have to wait months, if not years, to get our rights restored or to get what you said? I mean,
yeah,
I liked what they did to the 2nd district when they said, you guys better answer for yourselves. And it helps speed things up there. It helps speed things up in our case. But it would be really nice if they take somebody to the woodshed hard and they put their foot down. And if we had a U.S. Senate that was controlled by conservatives and had a pair of balls. I mean, I'm no great Mitch McConnell fan, but thank God he kept Merrick Garland off the court. You know, that sit there and started taking some of these judges that are writing absolute bullshit opinions and saying, you don't seem to be able to follow the Supreme Court dictate on the subject matter. Maybe we ought to impeach your ass. Force them to sit through an impeachment hearing, even if you don't have the 60 some odd votes to get there. But you know what? You know, you want to answer for yourself. You know, I mean, that's that and just if there's a way to get after legislative immunity and make all, because until they get hit in their own personal pocketbook, they don't care. You know, JB Pritzker has spent over $300 million on his campaigns. He doesn't care. So with all that, my lovely wife is handing me my expense report that I have to turn in to the gun club for everything. But you know, Aurora Sportsman's Club is stepping up. You got the FFL Illinois guys stepping up. You got State Line Rifle Association, Gun Saves Life, all those guys stepping up. because they, people, they're drawing a line to fight here in Illinois. And, I'm happy to be a part of that movement, to sit there and help them out in whatever way I can. But yeah, Illinois was never this bad. It's only in the last, since the midterm elections, that it's just gone over the edge, because we have an ineffectual Republican Party in the state. It's one state, one party dominance, and they've been creeping out from the city, and and we got screwed at the state Supreme Court, because we used to have a good Supreme Court. We really did. State Supreme Court, good court. We won a bunch of rulings up there. And then what happens? The Democrats saw they were on the verge of losing the state Supreme Court to a Republican majority. And they, for the first time in 30 years, redrew the boundaries for the court districts. And and then J.B. Pritzker contributed $2 million to get 2 justices elected. And then the judicial ethics panel says there's no undue influence or no appearance of conflict of interest.
Pritzker sounds like a big old steaming sack of shit.
I call him Pizza the Hut.
Pizza the Hut.
I call him Burgermeister for a reason. You ever seen that old Christmas movie, like from the early
Santa
90s?
Claus is coming to town. Yeah.
Yes.
The claymation ones.
Yes.
I was actually going to ask, do you ever do any Santa Claus work around Christmas time at all?
So I started letting my hair go a little over a year ago, and I used to shave my beard off in the summertime when I finally got to where I could grow one. And last year, with my hair being as long as it is and letting my beard go, we'd be out to eat in November, and kids you'd start getting I know the look. And one day I have one of those little Santa elf type hats, and I'll go walking around. And like 3 days before Christmas, I was at the Jewel and the supermarket, and his kids looking at me. He said, "Shh." I snuck out for a few minutes, and they're all like, and then we did a cruise in April for my wife's birthday, and kids were looking at me, and he said, "Your kids?" The guy goes, "Yeah." I said, "What did you get them for Christmas?" And he told me. I said, "What are their names?" And they told me. And the kids looking at me, and I said, "Hey, Juan, did you like that?" And I forgot what the gift was. And he looks at me and I said, "What's on the wish list for this year?" And the dad already kind of knew. And I asked him, I said, "Is he going to get it?" I said, "Well, you better be a good boy. I'm going to be watching." And yes, Santa Claus does take a vacation. And then they ran into me on the elevator like a couple of times during the week. And he goes, and then last year, a friend of mine, his girlfriend's kid was kind of acting up. And so he changed my name in his phone to Santa. He said, "I did
that to my daughter."
He goes, "I got him on speed dial." And he puts me on there, and he had texted me. He said, "Hey, I'm going to call you." And so I found my hat and I started talking to the kid. I said, "Hey, Christmas is only a couple days away. I'm going to know. And your dad, and Joe's got me on speed dial." So I've played with it a little bit like that.
That's cool.
When I did this, when I was letting my beard go a couple other times before I let my hair go, back when I was still lobbying, they looked at me and they said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, I can either go play mall Santa, or I can go back over and do some contracting work in Syria." La la la. And there were a couple of guys that seriously thought I went to Syria because I would kind of blend in some ways and everything. So it's something that in my retirement years I'm kind of playing with right now. And then a couple of, my hair has not been this long since 1982 when I graduated high school. And I went in the service not long after that. So but there's some guys that just kind of needle me about it, and the more people needle me about it, I said, well, there's no reason to go to a hair, and my barber's semi-retired, so I get kind of stuck in a rut with the guys I go. But you can't, I've got a Hawaiian style Santa shirt, and I play around with it from time to time, and
That's
know,
funny.
when you get those looks from kids. So yeah, if you go Google me on the internet, you'll see a lot of different pictures of what I looked like before everything went white and everything, which it doesn't bother. I know some guy like Rob Blagojevich, our former governor, was so vain. He sat there and, pretty much used boot polish in his hair. But it is, but it's just a thing. It's fun to play with and whatever. And funny thing is, somebody over on Reddit has nicknamed me Gun Santa. It's a tag and it's stuck. And there's a couple of guys called Tactical Santa. So I'm looking at having some patches possibly done up like that.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
But yeah, no. Well, you can see the decals behind me. The one in the shade, the big one is basically a middle finger, but the middle finger is the AR-15.
Oh, nice.
That's my JB pitch, and it says not only can we say "F you," we have the ability to back it up. That's what those were kind of started with and everything. But yeah, no, we have some fun. And
what was the saying? People with ARs don't get in cattle cars, right, Rich?
Box cars,
yeah. No, I just this isn't. I signed up under Ronald Reagan. It was a different time back then. And when there's famous saying the nine most dangerous words in the English language is "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
Yeah. Everything.
Well, pilots just swap FAA for government.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I keep buying. You're going to need tanks and F-18s and have you ever heard of the Viet Cong, the Taliban, and the Mujahideen?
Yeah, seriously.
Right.
People that think that, maybe I should stop right there. But, and I think that's kind of the beauty of this, right? This is us, like you said, coloring within the lines, doing whatever we can to, fight lawfully. And I would be willing to take a guess, because I'm sure certain people are out there watching right now, so I'll be cautious in the way that I word this. I would be willing to guess that the same people that are coloring within the lines, taking the route of, law and lawsuits, and a lot of those people are doing everything they can to exercise every possible route to avoid something else that they may be willing to do, which is actually fighting.
Well,
and
you said it before. We just want to be left alone for the most part. And the funny thing is, a viewer on my channel 3D printed this and sent it.
Nice. I got to print one.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I've actually I have a thing about printing dust collectors as opposed to firearms, but that'll make an exception.
Yeah,
he just wanted to be left alone. He was left alone, and look what he fucking did. Jesus.
No, they didn't leave him alone. Now
No,
he made some mistakes, but when you push a man to that part that he spends 3 years building a armored up D8,
I mean
that's a whole new level of
that's a whole new level of FAFO. Yes.
Yeah.
That
is, and that's it. I mean,
they can only push us so far, and I think desperately or secretly, I think they desperately want to see that side of the gun community of that world,
absolutely,
because they win.
Stuff that's been coming out of every town in the last week about how the gun culture, the toxic masculinity, and whatever else they're saying, and how the gun culture.
I'm totally toxically masculine.
Is this whole racist, and they're trying to link it to what's going on with the anti-Latino sentiment that purportedly exists in Texas.
I invented the anti-Latino sentiment.
Look, hey, let me say this to Raven. So you could ask any of the guys that know me. I was 100% skeptical. I was the guy making fun of guys saying, "Yeah, just vote harder. It'll work. We can vote ourselves out of this." But take a step back, and even though we've had some losses, right, and even this most recent unfinished frame and receiver that was an administrative thing. That was not a ruling. There is no outcome with that other than a pause. That was the pause button placed. It is highly likely that we are going to see a victory from that. But even that, take a step further back and look at all the successes that we've had. I was the one that was like, we've done it all. We've exercised it all. The only muscle we have not exercised is the fight muscle. Let's do this, right? And I was kind of grounded by other people saying, no, look at all these positive things. Then I saw what happened with the New York State Rifle Pistol Association.
Carry.
Yeah, them. Then I saw, everything. I saw the positive forward movement in, excuse me, in different states. I saw, us coming together and fighting against braces and unfinished frames, and we actually are making some positive movement. So don't give up just yet.
And don't forget that the court took that fisherman's case off the East Coast, which is a direct lineup on the Chevron doctrine.
Yeah.
And so, I think that they're gonna boot Chevron. And if they do that, the administrative state is terrified of what that looks like. And the gun guys need to understand that's going to apply to us in a big, big way. So I think that Roberts knows he's got that teed up in his back pocket and it's going to go. It'd be nice if we got that ruling in January instead of in June, but they've got that teed up and ready to go, which feeds into all of this because the bump stocks, the pistol braces, the framing receivers, and whatever. And now I guess there's a challenge to what Biden's zero tolerance policy on FFLs is that, this is all Administrative Procedures Act stuff. They're not 2A challenges. And we're not doing bad on the 2A front. I mean, the Hawaii Balisong one, you had an Obama judge yesterday or today boot a lion's share of the sensitive places that they copied out of the New York rewrite.
Yeah.
So there's stuff like that. Look, I was in the courtroom for the hearing with our injunction downstate. This judge, he goes, does anybody any of the attorneys want to address the 50 cal stuff? And the one attorney from Southern Illinois, Thomas Magg, gets up, Your Honor, during the time of the founding, he said, most of them were a 69 caliber or more. And the judge looked down and said, George Washington carried a 56 caliber pistol. How many judges know that George Washington carried a 56 caliber pistol?
Yeah.
And when he went on, and then he caught something I didn't even see, was that they outlawed grenade launchers as one of the attachments. And
I love that because the things that disturb me the most about the Second Amendment community is the number of 50 cal deaths every year, and then the senseless deaths by grenade launchers or bayonet lugs. Bayonets.
I have a shotgun that has a bayonet lug on it. But the judge then went on. The judge did a couple of other things, but Thomas Magg, he caught this and he said, Your Honor, that's not a grenade launcher. That's a 37 millimeter flare launcher. It's a signal device. And the judge goes, and they put it up on a screen, and he goes, yeah, that company right there. And I'm like, holy shit, the guy's right. It's one of the 37 millimeter flares, right? And
not a firearm.
And he goes, and Your Honor, the United States Coast Guard mandates signaling devices.
Yeah.
And he goes, maybe a guy's a hunter and he's in the woods, and if he's going to get lost, he wants to be able, whatever. He goes, I can go down to Walmart and buy a 12 gauge flare gun right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so
my signaling device right here.
The judge sat there, and and then when the other side got up there, he goes, okay, my wife's at home. I can see by the ring on my phone that 4 armed men are coming into our house. So what do I tell her? Do I tell her to get the pump shotgun that only holds 3 shells? Do I tell her to get the pistol, or do I tell her to get the AR with a 30-round magazine? And it's like, how many judges are really up on the fact that because of hunting regulations, your typical shotgun only holds 3 shells, one in the pipe and two in the mag? And it's like, so this guy knew more about guns than, but
I mean, that's what we need. We need people that actually have the technical knowledge
Right.
of firearms and accessories. And I mean, there's shit that we've forgotten more than
yeah.
these people will ever
Yeah.
know. And we have intimate, relationships with firearms that we build and buy and use and shoot. But these are also the same
And
people
that's
that are
why,
saying they're willing to fight and die for the cause,
so right after Sandy Hook, they tried a gun and magazine ban in Illinois, and we beat them back. We were 3 weeks after Sandy Hook. We're the first state to do it. And when they got the mag ban to the floor, they had, I was arguing with one, I thought was a possible moderate Democrat we could get. And I said, this is a gun ban. No, it's not. It's a magazine ban. No, it's a gun ban. And I pointed out lever guns like the Henrys and the Colt Lightning, which was a pump action, all tubular magazine fed. I said, here, read what you've got. I said, these magazines are permanently affixed to the gun. Therefore, the gun's illegal because they hold more than 10 rounds. You can't sell them. And he was a lawyer, and he went back, and there they came up with an amendment to exempt lever guns. So part of the difference in the Illinois law, the Illinois 1.9, the gun ban, exempts manually operated firearms. The magazine ban in 1.10 does not have the same exemption. They specifically exempt some lever guns, and they exempt a couple of, but they don't exempt like the Colt Lightning. They definitely don't exempt, they don't exempt the 870. In 1.10, it has that language that talks about or can be readily converted to, which they got greedy. They got, that's why I'm, if we actually have to go to a trial on this case in Southern Illinois, our guys, they've got me in there as an expert witness, and I am more than willing to go up against the state of Illinois and their monkeys, in the courtroom on this stuff. Because like you said, we've forgotten more.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think that our guys, and it's not our lawyers, but I think our side, we need to quit being afraid about military grade. Because if you really boil it down, the M24 is nothing more than a repackaged Remington 700.
Yeah.
Okay. And everybody, AR-15s are semi-auto and M4s are full auto. Correct. But you're saying, M1 carbines were semi-auto.
Thank you, Taco Syndicate. Appreciate you.
Oh, hey, dude.
Remember.
And so, you've got that. It's like, quit doing that. And let's just say that, look, if the military, everything, muskets, the 1911, the 9mm, they've all been, the 590, the Model 12, the Remington Model 10, the Ithaca 37 have all been combat firearms.
Yep.
And so what? Let's not run and try to and get away. Let's just embrace it, hug it, and say, yeah, so what?
I'll say this. Oh, go ahead, Warsaw.
I was going to say, it's funny you mentioned it, Ty. You actually told me that the M1 Garand was actually off the ban off the list of Illinois. I'm like, how does that apply?
Yep. Because it has a fixed magazine of less than 10 rounds.
And that's General Patton's M1 Garand, an actual definition of weapon of war, which was during the Second World War.
Yeah. But remember, they didn't care about that. They made fun of that in the floor debate. They sat there and they're, they want to grab as much as they can because they don't like it. And the only thing they're going to understand is the Supreme Court grinding their nose in dog shit saying you can't do that. That's the only thing they're going to, and then they're going to try to find a way around it, just like ATF is trying to do with a bunch of their bullshit.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we got to fight this fight because the alternative doesn't look pretty. I mean, if you want us to look like the Balkans, because that's what it will come to. If you go down that road, then we look like the Balkans. And I don't think that does anybody any good. And it's going to be a mess. But so and I think you're absolutely right. I think the other side is hoping some guy goes off the edge, and I mean, I think they've tried to make that out of January 6th. They keep trying to figure out how to keep tying it back when the only guys with guns in the Capitol were the cops.
Well, and the interesting thing is that, these people watched a year of all of their cities being burnt down and then finally felt like something was taken from them. And they said, you know what? It's our turn. And then one day turned into years of just ridiculous.
CNN 2 years every night was running J6 coverage.
It's ridiculous, man. It's
I mean, I used to say this at the Capitol and committees. I said, there are more guns on my block than any block in the city of Chicago, and we're not killing each other. Explain that to me.
Yeah.
And one legislator said, how can you say that? Because I know how many guns I own, and I know 3 other guys like me on my block. That's how I can say that. And it's like, and back at the time, I said, there's an AR-15 leaned up against my back door. There's a 200-acre farm field that is across the pond behind my house, and the coyotes run through there, and we've had them come up into the yard for our dogs and stuff like that. And so it's like, I've raised 2 boys. I have a 23-year-old and a 19-year-old. Never had an issue with them, with me having an AR by the back door with magazines, readily available. Tell me how. What's the difference? I mean, they didn't riot and loot in our neighborhoods out here. Why?
Because they know, right? They know. And look, the only thing that happened when that year of the summer of love, the year of rioting they said it was for the rights of minorities, 37 minorities were killed in the riots. Like, these people, we know that we're on the side of
and minority-owned businesses destroyed.
Absolutely, including David Dorn, retired, police chief that was shot and killed over a TV. It's crazy. I know we gotta go ahead and wind this down, but I want to go ahead and remind everyone here to keep this type of tyranny from coming to your state next, because trust, if this is successful in Illinois, this is absolutely gonna go to other states, and yours could be one of them, and mine could be too.
You're right. They're trying to get their hands around Michigan since the Democrats took over there. They're trying to get their hands around Michigan, or not Michigan, Minnesota, because they are solidifying their control in government up in Minnesota. Whoever would have thought that Colorado would have had a magazine ban, and they're trying to find out a way to get to a gunman. Colorado, I mean, that's they're purple to bluish now, but they were never that way before. I mean, you had the Carolinas are fighting back. But when the Democrats got a hold of Virginia, look, they ran 1 gun a month back in. They ran some of that kind of stuff, did a bunch of that stuff. This stuff will get there if everybody just thinks somebody else is going to do the lifting. And look, I don't expect everybody to be as involved as I am, or have spent 40 years of their life doing this. The thing is, though, but then you can contribute. And if you help fund these lawsuits, and we do this in a smart way, then hopefully what we've had to go through here in Illinois, if we're that brick in the wall, then it doesn't come to your doorstep, and you never have to go through, I'm out at the gun club building ranges all the time. And there isn't a day that doesn't go by when I don't get stopped by somebody and asked a bunch of these questions. And if you don't want to have to live like this or have them Californicate your state, this is the way, because the other options aren't pretty. And this is the best way to do it. Like I said, but an amicus brief to the Supreme Court's $15,000.
Yeah.
And coordinating all that stuff takes time, effort. You got to get the right lawyers, and so there's a lot that goes in behind the scenes on this. And we war game stuff out on conference call after conference call, trying to figure out and look at what the other side is doing. They are parsing income and use. They are parsing law-abiding citizen. All right. They are parsing dangerous and unusual, to where they have gone and lied. And we caught them, and they had to put a footnote in as to why they were saying dangerous or unusual instead of what the court said, dangerous and unusual. And on that one alone. So you mean to tell me between Heller, McDonald, Catano, and now New York, that all those Supreme, so it was 5, that's 10, 9s, or 9, that's 19, and then 6. So 25 justices. I went to public school, so my math gets a little slow. 25 justices, and all their law clerks got it wrong on dangerous and unusual. You mean tell me that? And that's what they're doing. And they are parsing every, look at the way they're trying to throw Bowie knife laws from the time of the founding, and whether or not they're parsing 1791 or 1865 as to what the right time frame is. And they're trying to drive a bus through every one of these little cracks that they think they can, trying to come up with something. And that's what we're, but if we have to go through this pain and it shuts it down once and for all, that, semi-autos are just declared verboten, that your restrictions on them are no mas, then great. But we could use all your subscribers and supporters. $5, from 100,000 people goes a long way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Very true.
Yeah,
and Warsaw, I apologize. I got distracted. I forgot to come back to you, because obviously this has implications for most everyone here.
It's not just me or him.
Yeah, for sure. But what is it that you're most fearful of for this situation and most hopeful of?
To be honest with you, I'm not afraid of the state police are threatening to arrest me, because honestly, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but this whole assault weapons ban, I see it as just as the pistol brace rule. It's like, pay me or I'll leave you alone, or you're going to jail. And the biggest thing I actually have fear out of this, Dark, you got an American flag behind you, right?
Yeah. It's a Gadsden American flag, but yeah.
I worry that our country is actually going to possibly die. That's the biggest fear of my nighttime when I fall asleep, is thinking the American flag is turned black to gray, and everybody's turned their back on it. Yeah. As far as, the whole issue of like, all right, here, the 2A community, like, I get so many people saying, oh, you're from Illinois, you're from New York, you're from Maryland, you're from Mass. You're always shitting on each other, and you're hating one another for where they are, what their political background might be. Guys, we're in America. I don't care what my state flag represents me or where I'm from. I'm looking at the American flag.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. Like, dude, if we focused on just helping one another and forget the borders of what state defines us, where we're living, we would get along. As far as what I'm looking forward to is just stomping these bans out left and right and regaining back our freedom.
And I agree with you, Warsaw, and that's one of the reasons ASC and the groups that I've been involved with, we have filed amici briefs in other states to help them along with arguments.
Yeah, and as you mentioned that too, Todd, I've seen even the truck drivers, they can't even bring their pieces across state lines because federal law says you can't be doing it as well as state law. Because you go like that from like Arizona to California, you'd be arrested for carrying a piece that's prohibited in that place. But there's two quotes I actually want to read to you guys. First quote, I actually came across this. People of a divided nation suffer more from themselves who use the division for the political gain than the division itself. And there's another one I want to read to you. We've had a past president, Donald Trump. He always said, "Make America great again," but I call bullshit. Quote, "America has been a great since its founding, a country built to uphold freedom, conscience, and religion, the first country to claim independence from colonial rule, the first to establish a republic based on the separation of powers. America's greatness lies in the ideals that birthed and sustained it, not its might. We the people, we have a voice, we can make it happen."
Hell yeah.
Hey, Black, when you when you get done tonight, go to Google and do a Google search, "Dear Hillary Hipsters."
And there's also a quote, actually, it's told a friend of mine this. It's always been in cycle of my head thinking about this. You don't know what freedom until it's taken away from you.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the truth.
Right, guys, we need to wrap. I'm Flying Rich. You can find all my social media on flyingrich.com. Dark, take it away.
Yeah, DLD After Dark. Usually go live Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, but now I'm going every other Saturday, just for now. But I'm probably going to be making some adjustments to my schedule, going live more frequently, and you guys may see some more items come up on DLD Hardware for sale. So if you guys do need anything for building, go on DLD Hardware. I got jigs and all sorts of other stuff. But during this time, it's really important that we help those that are fighting, right? Give them a war chest to fight on our behalf. So these types of tyrannical, draconian, ridiculous encroachments on all of our rights don't start to come nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right on.
And Todd, where can they find you?
I'm Freedom's Steel on YouTube, or you can look me up, Todd Vandermite, on Facebook. But yeah, Freedom Steel. The icon is a bulldozer, so you'll know you're at the right one. We're not the steel building company. It's a play on words from, building new ranges with bulldozers, as well as the metal it takes to keep this fight up. So that's it. Appreciate anybody that wants to like, subscribe. I try to take a different tact, as you've heard, on the Right to Repair, the 1022, the 870. Those are all up there on the older videos of mine, and that's it. We do a live broadcast every once in a while. Sit around, drink a few cocktails, and answer questions. But if anything breaks here in Illinois or otherwise, I'll get it up there. Thanks.
Okay.
Awesome. And Warsaw?
I'm Warsaw Patriot. You can find me on YouTube, but I'm not posting any content till this whole thing gets overturned, because probably because I've talked to attorneys, they're probably watching us.
That's probably right.
And guys, help everybody out as much as possible. We're all Americans. We're in this fight together.
Yeah. Be kind.
Amen. Ready,
All right.
guys?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.